exploration for the Europeans began with the Portuguese. When the Portuguese invaded the town of Ceuta in 1415, a soldier later named Prince Henry the Navigator found that the city had a prosperous trade post, spices, and informational books with scientific discoveries. Prince Henry then decided to set up a school of navigation in Sagres. He sent navigator João Gonçalves Zacro in 1418 and finds the islands uninhabited. At these two islands, they were able to cultivate sugar and vineyards. Sadly, Prince Henry died before Bartholomew Diaz sailed to the Cape of Hope at the tip of South Africa in 1487. A few years later, Vasco da Gama sailed down the coast of Africa and reached India, the source of trade, in 1498. Soon after, in 1500, a man named Pedro Alvarez Cabral sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in the country of Brazil. He colonized Brazil as Portugals. Soon, the Portuguese set up sugar plantations and had slaves from Africa sent over to work for them. This began the slave trade, making the Portuguese the first to participate in this event. The Portuguese were the first to initiate the Age of Exploration and create the race to discovery, trade, and wealth. Following the Portuguese example, the Spaniards quickly persevered to catch up with the discoveries of the Portuguese. The Spaniards also started exploration to become extremely wealthy. Their explorations began with Christopher Columbus. Columbus was convinced he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. He consulted with multiple kings and queens before coming to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. After his third meeting with the King and Queen of Spain, he was able to convince them to fund his voyage. He received 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and sailed from Spain on August 3, 1492. Land was spotted from the Pinta on October 12th. They landed in present-day Cuba, but Columbus convinced himself he was in Cathay, China, even though there were not any major cities like in the past descriptions of Asia. Columbus then took off towards modern-day Haiti and conquered the land for Spain. He received tons of praise back in Spain, but when he went back to the newly colonized land, he found that all of his men had been killed by the natives. Christopher died thinking that he had found a way to Asia by heading west instead of finding a completely new land. Amerigo Vespucci received credit for finding a new world even though it had been discovered earlier by Columbus. Amerigo recognizes that the land was in fact not Asian but new land. He spread the word about his new land, and when a German cartographer drew a new map of the world, he named the new land America after Amerigo. Ferdinand Magellan made a huge discovery. Ferdinand took a crew and ship to sail down the coast of Africa, past Asia, around the coast of South America, and back to Spain. Although Magellan died somewhere in the Philippines, his men continued the voyage around the world. He was the first to ever circumnavigate the Earth and prove that the Earth was round. After Hernandez Cortez sailed to Mexico, where he promptly clashed with the Aztecs, Cortez abolished the Aztecs and seized the land as Spain's. Similarly, Francisco Pizarro conquered the Incas and seized the land in the name of Spain. In the Netherlands, the Dutch had a great trade system in Asia. They mainly wanted to trade and help the Filipinos push out the Portuguese in exchange for their products. The trading spices between the islands and the Dutch became known as the East India Company. Another trading post that flourished was the Dutch West India Company. This was started when Henry Hudson sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and colonized New Netherlands, known as New York, and New Amsterdam, known as Manhattan. New Netherlands became the #1 trading post. On August 14, 1642, a man named Abel Janszoon Tasman was sent by the Dutch East India Company to sail south and discover new trade routes and create new trading opportunities. Tasman encountered several islands in which he did not trade before arriving upon a set of islands now called the Fiji Islands. Once Tasman had returned, the Dutch East India Company was not pleased with his voyage because he had not discovered any new trade routes, but they gave him another chance and sent him out again. The second time that Tasman sailed, he only charted the northern area of Australia. When he returned, the Dutch East India Company was unhappy because they did not receive any money back on their investment. Soon the French decided to join the party. A man named Jacques Cartier thought that he could find a northwest passage to Asia. Instead, he ended up in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, where he promptly entered trade with the natives for fur. Later came Champlain, who actually was able to establish Quebec as a French colony. Two men named Marquette and LaSalle traveled down the Mississippi River and were able to create a colony in the Ohio Valley. This would later cause problems because it was so close to the English colonies of Jamestown and Plymouth. In England, John Cabot, the first explorer, sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to Cape Breton Island, where he promptly established the land for England. Another English explorer was Sir Francis Drake, who was sent by Queen Elizabeth to be the second person to circumnavigate the world. In 1607, the Virginia Company sent a group of men to North America, where they established Jamestown. The reason for this colony was mainly business. The Virginia Company wanted them to find gold, but they only discovered fake gold. Luckily, they discovered how to cultivate tobacco. In 1620, the Pilgrims sailed on the Mayflower, headed for Jamestown, but instead landed north of there in Massachusetts. Differently, the Pilgrims sailed for religious reasons rather than business. They wanted to escape the Church of England and establish their own ways of religion and government. Later, King Charles wanted to unite the two colonies, but New Netherlands was resting in between them. He hired his brother, the Lord of York, to push out the Dutch and gave the land to his brother. The Lord renamed New Netherlands to New York after himself and changed the name of New Amsterdam to Manhattan. When the English conquered New Netherlands, they also received its prosperous trading post. An explorer named James Cook discovered Australia and New Zealand. The English then used Australia as a prisoner colony for debtors.